How can you get out of it? The man had to climb Mount Everest, or, whatever it is we have to do in life, having a bigger car, a better house, whatever it is, it's all related to. But all these desires, and it says it's an Eastern philosophy, is the cause of all suffering. So if you want to suffer, well, keep on going on looking for our joy and happiness on external things, because anything on the external, the equal amount internally brings upset. So if I have here, I'll talk about the food, a big, tremendous meal with all this goopy, stupid stuff that the corporations, we were brainwashed to have them make this our higher power. Do you want to have people control your life and it made you sick? There's all these diseases and all the sickness and illnesses that come from it, being overweight and all of these problems, and psychologically, again, that white sugar it's processed food, and it's just like the sugar in the white powder, and it could be cocaine, heroin. When you relate it to the drugs, it's all the same thing. It's a drug, making it a higher power. But look at the way our lives were and all the devastation, illnesses, and all the problems we had from all of this, from doing it that way. So step 1 says, and we're going to work to step 12, which talks about that spiritual awakening, says we were powerless. So first of all, this guy said to me once, I used to go to this guy years ago when I had all these issues, and I talked to him, and I would tell him, I would sit there and say, I'd be in the problem, as it's called. I'd say, look, this happened, that happened. And as always would say to me, how has that worked out for you? How's that working out for you? He would go, how's that working out for you? So the question we have to ask is, we know, because we're here, it's not working out for us. Because sometimes people will say, well, you're talking about all of this in the 12 steps, and I don't know if I can accept it. But how's it been working out for you so far in your life? I can guarantee you, anybody who works these steps through their life and does these things, they have what's called the promises. There's happy, joyous, and freedom from fear of economic insecurity, people, having that spiritual awakening. So step 2 said, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves. So we had to understand that it couldn't be us. Some people say, I believe in a higher power so long as it's not me. And the ego is also called easing God out. Step 3 is so paramountly important, because I always made myself, whenever I try, it's called self-will. And whenever during the day that or anybody here can relate to this probably, that you're miserable, irritable, or discontent, it's called, what you're doing is taking your self-will back. You're making it about you. Oh, I can figure this out. This is related to the diets and why 95% of them fail. And if you're here and one of the biggest things in this country is food, I always go back to the food, but if you're here for drugs, alcohol, or whatever other compulsions you have, there are a lot of 12-step programs. It's all related to the same thing. The food is about everything else in life, and everything else in the people are all about the food. It's all about the selfishness, self-centeredness, ego, right? Making it about us. Look, there's really 2 sides to us. There's the human side, human experience, which really is a compilation of what people told you life was all about. And when you grew up, they told you how to live life and what to do. But there's also the source within us, spirituality, God consciousness, higher power, spirit of universe. It's a universal vibration, which we can feel, which brings us into higher ways and levels of thinking. Not the lower levels are when we get into the pride, right? The 7 deadly sins. Gluttony, of course, is one of them. Pride, envy, lust, all of these things, jealousy, it all comes from this, but it all enslaves us. So again, you want to be imprisoned, or do you want to be happy, joyous, and free? And the thing is, in the also one of those lectures, the guy said, he said, look, you can walk out of that prison right now. So in other words, we can have that spiritual awakening right now. We don't have to wait until 5, 10, 15 years. I always hear in meetings, they say it takes 5 years to get your marbles and then learn how to use them, 10 years. And then they talk about this. But we're what's called in the solution, not the problem. Here's a solution, right? If I tell you about, something that happened to me during the day or a problem I had, if I said to you, for instance, look, I had an upset with somebody at work, say my boss at work or somebody else there, I'm what's called in the problem. Because the problem, I'm becoming the victim. The problem isn't the other person. The problem is nothing outside of us. 95% of the solution to our problem is our attitude. We change our attitude and the world around us changes. But even if it doesn't, even if I change my attitude and the other person doesn't, that's fine with me. So the shift in attitude change with this consciousness, where I could have love and tolerance and patience for a person who's upset at me because, it says in our book here, the main problem in our lives is resentment, anger. It's all towards people, right? All of these things we think about, people, resentment, anger, fear, and the jealousy comes in and all of these things. But, when you lose the self, you got to lose yourself to find the self. So when you lose the self and have that spiritual awakening, which is what it's all about, and that higher consciousness, which was in all the time, we get out of all of these problems and the depression again. I can't think of two things at once. But if I'm going to sit here and think of sentimental feelings, anger, resentment from the past, who knows? It could be, and it says on page 62, all these things can be an illusion. Most of the time, again, when we have these upsets and anger and fear, it is an illusion. A lot of times I'm paranoid and I think, oh, somebody's doing something to me, or they said this or they said that. But I go a step further, even if it's true, if somebody's gossiping about me or somebody, whatever they do, whatever they call me a name, whatever they look at me the wrong way, or they try to do something to me, when we're out of the self. And, it's really, really, that's the freedom and joy and happiness. And, that same person and those people around us, when we change, the world around us changes. When we change, the world around us changes. Another one is that when we get silent, pray, and meditate, the world surrenders to us, right? They surrender because before we were fighting them, they were fighting back. We were fighting, it says in the 10th step, we were fighting everyone and everything. We had to stop doing that. We had to wear life as a loose garment. The answer is getting at ourselves. That's a spiritual awakening. And step 3 said, made a decision. This is everything I'm talking about, to turn our will and our lives over the care of a higher consciousness, a higher power, God. Because during the day, as soon as, and this is so great to understand, that if during the day you're upset and you're thinking of things and, it's just relating to getting out of the self. You're trying to control life. If only I were more successful, if only people would act the way I wanted them to, they would be happy, I'd be happy. It talks about that. We could be director of the play, and then we were miserable. So step 4, and I'm going to work up to that spiritual awakening, says, made a searching and fearless moral inventory. And those are all the things I'm saying. We had to realize that our thinking and our way of going about things through our lower levels of thinking were, all the things like, destructive thoughts and trying to resentment and anger and fear. We had to realize what our part was. But the interesting thing is, our part, it talks about, is what's important. And why is that? Because no matter what goes on around us in the world, we can be like an airplane flying over the storm clouds. We can, just overlook it and be happy, joyous, and free. It no longer is about these daily, everyday things. It's always, we make it all about that. That's a low-hanging fruit. If only people respect me, if only I had a better, more food, if I had more drugs, more alcohol, more money, more success.